Hi, Thomas.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm so pleased to talk to a 15-time Oscar nominee. This is
Wait a
fantastic.
minute.
With Elemental, by the way, beautiful score. I was listening to it just yesterday to kind of refresh my memory because I saw it at a sneak preview in Pixar a couple of months ago, and the score immediately stuck out. I think you had just laid down a tracker for their initial press day work. But at its core, Elemental is essentially two things. It has a thematic context of an immigrant story and a relationship drama, romantic comedy, whichever one you want to say. Looking at the immigrant aspect, obviously the score pulls from a lot of different cultures internationally. How did you settle on what instrumentation and kind of what you were going to use to reflect that theme of the immigrant experience?
I mean, I think just kind of whatever occurred to me. I mean, when I start a movie, I try to let anything kind of hit my ears, and then I measure what hits my ears against what works when I watch an image. So I don't think it began with any idea other than, you're right, it is a sense of otherness and non-otherness. And what did that mean in terms of color? And then certain qualities of sound, like a vocal chatter or a vocalese, certain types of drums just struck both me and Pete Sohn, and we just kind of did it one step at a time, which is typically how I work. It's just, I typically don't begin with a concept. I kind of reach or find a concept, and it's validated for me just by watching the movie and enjoying it, or leaning in and paying attention.
So that was actually going to be that's a great segue to another question I wanted to ask you. Was this experience different than something like Wall-E or Finding Nemo for you?
Um, I mean, there's different challenges to any movie you work on, obviously, and for me, it's just you like I say, you just begin and you see where you go, and suddenly it's a bit like puzzle pieces. You get one idea, and then one idea inspires another. But with Wall-E, it was was it going to be a space opera, like Star Wars, or was it going to have quirkier elements in it? And all of those things are negotiations with the filmmaker all the time. I mean, it's a highly collaborative thing.
Yeah. So one thing that I noticed as I was listening to the score again, you're using the voice. You're using human voice as its own instrument. Obviously, human voice is an instrument, but it changes. It reflects. It has different inflections throughout the score. Tell me about using that and making that choice.
Most of the voices you hear are sampled voices that are highly processed and then played with what's called an EWI, an electronic wind instrument. The way I've worked with these players, which many of whom I've known for decades, is a very, very loose environment. And I might say, let's try a voice in a high register or in a mid-range register. A player might say, how about this? And together we'll say, that's to this, it's to that, it's perfect, it's left of the mark. And then there's a lot of kind of just, let's see what happens. I think it's something that I love to do with music, and particularly with players that are so creatively involved and who I trust so much, just to see where it leads me, or to kind of lead it along, but let it be what it is, and then kind of butterfly net it. And hopefully then you're capturing something that's more, but just kind of more real and more improvisatorial.
Yeah, so that's interesting. You talk a lot about sort of improvisation or experimentation on working with scores. Was there something that was particularly new to you on working with Elemental?
I mean, I guess this notion of what does it mean to have an imaginary world with these implied cultures, and how do you refer to cultures when cultural music takes hundreds of years to develop. So that was probably more an intellectual challenge. In the end, I think I just tried to simplify the process and say, what works, or what do I like, or what does Pete like, and why does he like it? So again, I think I'm best when I'm a reactive composer, when I just say yes, that, as opposed to saying, no, here's my idea. I seldom try to put forth an idea as much as just try to capture it.
That's
I'm repeating
fantastic.
myself, but
The other sort of major theme running through Elemental is this concept of a romantic comedy or a romantic romance between the two characters, learning to interact with each other. How does the score reflect that?
Probably just scene to scene. You know, I mean, here's this movie, here are these moments where there's some implied tension or there's some implied, you know, connection. And then how do you make those moments work? Is it, you know, through tone and through intensity of spirit? Is it through melody? And I think in this case, in both instances, you know, you just try to grab those moments dramatically and turn them somehow musical, or again, make the story more viable and more enjoyable to be a part of.
Are you scoring more for the moments then, or were you developing themes for the individual elements themselves?
Probably both,
Okay.
and never again with a real design and idea, but just here I am, and how do I think about this? You can always circle back and say, you know, now that I've gotten to 2/3 through the movie, I know that something earlier would be better served by something that I discovered late. But typically in my process, you know, the active composition continues all the way through mixing the music. I'm constantly trying to hone what it is all the way to the bitter end, you know, trying to improve it as much as I can.
Were you using consistent instrumentation as you were exploring music for the fire-based segments versus, say, the water-based segments, or
Yes, in certain in instances, yeah, there was an octave mandolin that was used as a kind of tune or a motif for Bernie, Ember's father. And you come across these things and say, wow, let's take out this instrument again and see what we can do, and then ask yourself, does it work? Do you really, you know, sense a motif that's repeated? So yeah, I mean, what are instruments that might define fire more than what are instruments that might define, you know, water, which is complex to ponder, you know.
so what instrumentation does define water in your mind?
Probably more metal sounds, more
Mhm.
glass sounds, just because you associate, you know, I don't know, what does it mean? I mean, you know, we talk, when we talk about music, we talk in terms of color because music is so abstract. In the case of fire, it was a more plucked instrument, more
Mhm.
kind of some drum patterns. I mean, Ember is so fiery and angry a lot that, you know, what kind of instruments, you know, would support that kind of emotion coming out of her. I mean, she's more fiery. I mean, I guess you could really take that she's got a temper, she's hot-blooded, whereas Wade is cooler, literally, you know, in terms of his blue look, as opposed to Ember's kind of orange reddish look. So all of those things are clues in terms of what musical color matches or integrates with a visual element.
Last question for you. Tell me about working on the song "Steal the Show." Tell me about kind of how your score supported the song.
Um, I just had several ideas that I thought might be fun. I think a kind of tabla pattern. Ari Leff, Lauv came over to my studio. We went through a lot of ideas, potential ideas that he could work on, and he kind of pointed to this one riff. And then he said, "Can you excuse me for about an hour?" And so, of course, you know, it's like you're meeting someone new, and you know, what does it mean to collaborate with someone you don't know that well? And I left him alone for maybe 45 minutes or an hour, and came back, and he had written some melodies, and the song just started to roll along. It was over a 2-day period. I think we got the basis for a song, and then it was refined, you know, over a period of 2 or 3 additional weeks. But he had
Excellent.
much to do with it. I mean, he was a great collaborator.
Excellent. Yeah, I can hear the da-na-na-na-na, that piece. You know,
Yeah.
it popped out when I first saw the film, and of course when I saw it in its entirety. So it's great score, beautiful score. I
Oh,
loved your
thanks.
work in it. So I think that's everything I have for you today. Thank you so much.
Oh, well, thank you. Appreciate the questions.
Take care.
All right. Take care.